Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our public meeting of planning for Monday, September 25th, 2023. I'll ask if there are any disclosure of conflict of interest. Seeing none, accept the agenda. Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cadell, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the public meeting agenda, public meeting of planning agenda for Monday, September 25th, 2023.
Thank you. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Ratify the minutes. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Martin, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry
What's going on with you two? Jeez.
accepts the minutes of the public meeting of planning on Monday, June 26th, 2023.
So what bar were you guys at? Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. And moving on to zoning amendments, we'll start with Z14 2023. Welcome, Chantal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome everybody to the public meeting of planning. At this time, there are no recommendations from staff. This meeting is for information purposes only. It's to gather all comments from the public and from council to ensure all relevant concerns are addressed, should there be any. A recommendation will then be made at a subsequent council meeting. So there will be no voting from council tonight. Voting from members of council will occur at a subsequent council meeting. This is to ensure that members of council have time to review the application and bring forward any questions or concerns before the actual council meeting. It also gives time for the staff to review any comments and concerns that may arise. The actual bylaw amendment document will only be read, passed, and signed at a subsequent council meeting. Both files that are being presented tonight have been circulated as per the Planning Act, being by mail and a notice posted on the property. Z14 2023. The owner is Lois McKinnon. The location is 1090 Aberdeen Road in Vankleek Hill. An aerial view of the subject property. The official plan designation, which is agricultural resource lands. Our zoning map layer here indicating general agricultural. The purpose of the application is to rezone both the severed and retained portion, subject to consent application B3423, condition number 2 and 3 as follows. The retained portion of the property, which is approximately 75.3 acres, from general agricultural to general agricultural special exception to prohibit residential development. And the severed portion of the property, approximately 1.78 acres, from general agricultural to general agricultural special exception to acknowledge the deficiency in the lot frontage on Aberdeen Road from the required 45 meters to the proposed 10 meters. Acknowledge interior yard setback deficiency from the required 6 meters to the proposed 3 meters for the accessory storage buildings, which is a 1.5-story garage, higher than the 5 meters, and to prohibit agricultural uses. So this is the actual severance layer. So it's showing you exactly what the cut is going to be. A little bit of a closer view. The land area is approximately 77 acres. There was a conditional approval from the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry on April 20th, 2023 to sever off approximately 1.78 acres, which would only be used for residential purposes. So this is deemed surplus to the needs of a farming operation. The retained portion is approximately 75 acres, which is going to remain an existing agricultural and farming operation. We have received no comments from members of the public. RCA submitted a comment for the mapped watercourse. So any alterations or improvements, anything that can interfere with the watercourse would be subject to approval. This is the building location certificate. West property line setback to the 1.5-story garage is closer to the accessory storage building than what is required, as is more than 5 meters in height. The new line is proposed to be in such a location to keep the area to a minimum to accommodate the residential use for the dwelling, septic, well, and all accessory buildings. Most of the east property line follows the CN Railway. As per condition number 5 on the notice of decision, an environmental easement for the operational noise and vibration emissions in favor of CN will need to be registered. No entrances permitted. Currently, there is only one entrance on the property for the residential portion with the assigned civic number of 1090, which will remain. A new entrance and civic number could be issued for the agricultural portion of the severance on either the south end of the property adjacent to Aberdeen or on Seven Hills Road, which are both municipal roads. A change of use permit for the old barn agricultural building will be required. The chief building official will go on site to inspect all structures prior to any file closures. So here you're seeing over the railway, so the entrance to the residential section. More views from the road, from the entrance on both sides. Section 34 of the Planning Act gives municipal councils the authority to pass zoning bylaws and make amendments to existing zoning bylaws. The Provincial Policy Statement, also known as the PPS, provides policy direction on matters of provincial interest related to land use, planning, and development. A resident surplus to a farming operation is permitted, provided that the severance can be approved. The new lot will be limited to a minimum size needed to accommodate the use, accessory uses, and appropriate sanitary sewage and water services. The official plan contains a number of goals and strategic objectives. Growth is the goal to direct most forms of development to support the efficient use of land. SDG County's official plan policy permits lot creation in agricultural lands for residents surplus to a farming operation. In conclusion, based on the criteria above, the proposed zoning amendment conforms to the relevant policies of the United Counties, Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry's official plan. It is consistent with the provincial policy statement and compliant with the Township of North Glengarry zoning bylaw, number 39-2000. And that's it for that one.
Thank you, Chantal. I'll ask the clerk to ask 3 times.
Does anyone wish to speak in favor or against the application this evening? A second time, does anyone wish to speak in favor or against the application this evening? And a third and final time.
Thank you. Any questions from members of council? Okay, perfect. Seeing none, we'll move on to zoning amendment Z15, 2023. Chantal.
So this one here, the owner is Mr. Richard Burton and Nicole Florette Descartes. The location is 3744 Angel Road in Apple Hill. So we will begin again with the aerial view of the location. The official plan designation, agricultural resource lands. Our zoning layer is general agricultural. Purpose of the application is to rezone both the severed and retained portion, subject to consent application B81-23, condition number 3 and 4 as follows. The retained portion of the property, approximately 58 acres, from general agricultural to general agricultural special exception, to acknowledge the deficiency in the lot area from the required 74 acres to the proposed 58.82 acres, and to prohibit residential development. And the severed portion of the property, approximately 4.95 acres, from general agricultural to general agricultural special exception, to prohibit agricultural uses. So this is our severance layer indicating exactly where the cut will approximately be. A closer view. The land area is approximately 63.7 acres. There was a conditional approval was received from the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry on August 8th, 2023, to sever approximately 4.95 acres of land, which is residential and deemed surplus to the needs of a farming operation. The retained portion is approximately 58.82 acres, which is, and will remain existing agricultural and a farming operation. We have received no comments from the public. Our RCA submitted a comment for the map and water course. So again, any alterations or improvements that can interfere with the water course would be subject to approval. Trying to give a little bit more of a layout showing the structures without the layer on, the zoning layer. The application acknowledges that the lot area of the retained portion will be less than the minimum required 74 acres. The severance still deemed as a surplus dwelling application as per the Planning Act. New proposed property lines are proposed to be in such a location to keep the area to a minimum to accommodate the residential use for the dwelling, septic, well, and all accessory buildings, and is created to follow the natural features of the land. There are currently 3 entrances on the property, 2 for residential portions with the assigned civic number 3744, which will remain. 1 entrance for the dwelling and 1 entrance for the accessory storage buildings. 1 existing entrance is also to remain for the agricultural portion. Located east of the existing livestock facility with the assigned civic number 3794 Angel Road. No new entrances are proposed. The chief building official will go on site to inspect all structures prior to any file closures. Some more view of the entrances and off Angel Road. That's to the barn. Under Section 34 of the Planning Act, gives municipal councils the authority to pass zoning bylaws and make amendments to existing zoning bylaws. The Provincial Policy Statement, also known as the PPS, provides policy direction on matters of provincial interest related to land use, planning, and development. A resident surplus to a farming operation is permitted, provided that the severance can be approved. The new lot will be limited to a minimum size needed to accommodate the use, accessory uses, and appropriate sanitary sewage and water services. The official plan contains a number of goals and strategic objectives. Growth is the goal to direct most forms of development to support the efficient use of land. SDG County's official plan policy permits lot creation in agricultural lands for a resident surplus to a farming operation. In conclusion, based on the criteria above, the proposed zoning amendment conforms to the relevant policies of the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry's official plan. It is consistent with the provincial policy statement and compliant with the Township of North Glengarry's zoning bylaw number 39/2000.
Okay, thank you, Chantal. I'll ask the clerk.
Does anyone wish to speak in favor or against the application this evening? Second time, does anyone wish to speak in favor or against the application this evening? And a third and final time.
Okay, seeing none. Any questions from members of council? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to, since it's just a public meeting, there's no voting, we'll move to adjournment. Councillor Massey.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams. There being no further business to discuss, the public meeting of planning will adjourn at 5:59 p.m.
All those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. We will move right into our meeting of council. So again, I'd like to welcome everyone to our regular meeting of council for Monday, September 25th, 2023. I'd ask everyone to please stand for the national anthem.
Or not?
Thank you, everyone. Call the meeting to order. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, a motion to accept the agenda. Councillor Massey.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Move by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams, that the council of the Township of North Glengarry accepts the agenda of the regular meeting of council on Monday, September 25th, 2023.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. Adoption of the previous minutes. Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move by myself, seconded by Councillor Madden, that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as circulated. Regular meeting of council, September 11th, 2023. Special joint meeting of council with South Glengarry, September 14th, 2023. Committee of the Whole, September 20th, 2023. And the special meeting of council, September 20th, 2023.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any errors or omissions or discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried, none opposed. Moving on to delegations, I'd like to welcome James Morato, Associate Director of Development for Compass Energy Consulting. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and staff. My name is...
Oh, just have to press the, there we go.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and staff. My name is James Marzotto, Associate Director of Development from Compass Energy, and I have a deck to present today. I believe we're good to go?
Yeah, you have your, yeah.
Okay.
You can follow from there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So today we are introducing a request for our proposed energy storage project located in North Glengarry, North Glengarry Battery Energy Storage System, or North Glengarry BESS, as we refer to it. And we are requesting a municipal council support resolution for this project to be included in our Ministry of Energy IESO RFP LT1 submission this December. So I'll be introducing Compass today, context as why we're approaching you today and why we've proposed a project in North Glengarry, why your municipality in particular, and our approach to development. So as mentioned, the proposed project, it is a lithium-ion battery energy storage system up to 17 megawatts, which I'll go into more detail in subsequent slides. The proposed location is on a agricultural parcel nestled within Highway 417 and Sky Road in North Glengarry, directly adjacent to the St. Isidore transformer station. We'll see a map in a moment. And this proposed energy storage project is in response to the IESO RFP. Compass Energy, their affiliate Wagersig Solar Fit 5, were qualified applicant for this procurement, which is important to note. And we've chosen North Glengarry essentially for the open capacity currently on the three-phase power line via the St. Isidore transformer station. Compass Energy Consulting, we are out of Toronto. We're Canadian-owned out of Toronto, Ontario. We've been, as a consultant, developing over 2,000 megawatts of generation in Ontario for the last 10 years, and for the last 3 years have been developing our own projects. To further speak to this experience, the ISO ELT1 procurement that occurred this year for 1,500 megawatts, we won the most contracts. 15 megawatts in Windsor that's currently going through permitting right now with the city of Windsor, and also in Mississippi Mills, neighboring here, as we know, 5 megawatts as well, just outside of Almont, currently going through the permitting phase. So for context, general overview, the ISO requested 2,000 megawatts in the LT1, another 2,000 megawatts for LT1. So put things in perspective, you know, a nuclear power station in terms of generation, that's around could be up to 2,000, 3,000 megawatts. So that just speaks to the scale of how much the province needs just by 2030. And this 17 megawatts on the distribution side would contribute to that need, especially as we're near the Ottawa area, as this region continues to grow. That need coming from retirement of generation and just general growth of the province. Battery storage, we propose battery storage as an alternative to natural gas peaker generation. It's a cleaner, renewable energy source that we draw from the grid off peak and then sell it to the grid on peak when the province needs it the most. So start of the day when the factories are firing up, when air conditioning is, say, at its peak on a hot day, that's the general purpose for this needed energy capacity that the ISO needs. Speak more to the look and feel, though somewhat new to Ontario on the utility side. This project would be no more, we do have access for 5 acres on this property via a lease, but it would be essentially 2 acres of steel containers connected directly to the 3-phase line in terms of the look and feel. If you're driving by quickly, you know, it would look like another transformer station. And happy to go into more detail as needed. Why this municipality in general, St. Isidore Transformer Station had access or had capacity at its station via Hydro One. So that's why we chose this area, as well as just knowing Eastern Ontario is growing. Regulatory oversight, we just like to mention as a developer, the authorities having jurisdiction that we would engage, say now and in the coming months and years as the project reaches operation. Our, arguably, I would say personally, our biggest priority is engaging with North Glengarry Fire. We work with an emergency consultant even before the drawings are made up during procurement to let them know what the system would look like, our proposed emergency response plan, and how our team would work with them in terms of providing training, paying for that training, and also the response plan needed. That would make the chief and his team comfortable with this project. We're committing to that. Overview of the project site. So as I mentioned, we have access to 5 acres, 17 megawatts, which Hydro One, we learned last week, confirmed that there is capacity there. About 2 acres of battery storage on this particular parcel on Sky Road. In between Sky Road and 417. This is the project location. As a general rule for energy development, we like to go closest to the transformer station to account for voltage loss. Local benefits that we like to essentially pitch for every municipality we're in. Employment, for the most part, you know, this project is standing alone by itself for 25 years during the 25-year contract term. So operational jobs are next to nil, though civil works, our general contractor bringing in local trades is generally what happens. That's something to note. increased tax benefits. Generally, renewable energy brings diversified income stream for landowners. And as I mentioned before, natural gas line or natural gas generation offset. So in conclusion, we are asking for a signed municipal council support resolution that essentially tells the ISO that the project is supported within your municipality. We would, of course, go through any required permitting. Subsequent to winning a contract, we would know, say, in Q1, Q2, 24, if we were to submit in December if we have a contract. And this MCSR would be signed by an elective official per the ISO requirements, and those prescribed forms are will be released. There's draft forms now. We expect by the end of the week, actually, the final prescribed form from the MCR of the MCR to be released by the ISO. So that concludes kind of the general pitch. Of course, happy to go into more detail if there are any questions either today or in the coming days with staff. Happy to coordinate that.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Deputy Mayor Williams. I saw your list.
He's on my list. I'm just curious about, so I take it that, I mean, you mentioned lots of acronyms that,
Right.
names of programs that don't really mean anything
Yeah, happy
to
to-
us.
to
But,
expand.
no, that's okay. I'm just wondering if this is, so this project is being funded through, through the government then?
Yeah, yes and no, in a sense where, unlike, say, previous procurement programs for energy, this particular procurement program, each proponent bids their electricity price. So for capacity, so we'll certainly be making money, to put bluntly, through energy generation, but it's lowest bid price wins these contracts. Yeah.
So you're paying for the infrastructure
Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah, as a developer.
as a developer?
Mhm.
Okay.
Financing the project and.
Right.
Yeah,
And then off of some of the money you make, that goes to some of that to the property owner.
for sure, in terms of lease payments, yeah, we
Right.
won't be buying the parcel as it stands currently, long-term land lease. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not similar to the FIT program that was looking at funding solar some, 12, 13 years ago? It's not like that?
Not like that in a sense where the project is not making a fixed price for power. It's really whoever has the lowest kilowatt hour bid, they're going to win. Though the mechanics of it, working with Hydro One, with the ISO, that will certainly look similar. Just, interconnection, engineering, that will look similar, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Do you just want me to do my list or give other people a chance?
No,
here?
go ahead.
So I'm just curious, are there any homes that are in the proximity of the proposed location?
I'd want to confirm with you the exact, call it buffer or line in terms of meters. That's certainly something I can do to follow up, but I believe, and I'd like to clarify this, at least a couple of 100 meters away from the nearest dwelling, though I'd want to just double check for you.
Okay, and I'm asking for a reason.
Oh, absolutely. No. It's a question we get.
Yeah. I mean,
Common, yeah.
our neighbors have a windmill project that has caused them enormous grief with regards to radio frequencies and noise and all the rest of it, which brings me to my next question. Do these units create any type of noise or vibration or radio frequency disturbance?
So noise, yes. Typically through the permitting process will be required, and we'll just want to anyway, conduct a noise impact assessment in order to get that permitting. And there are, I don't know the exact decibel levels right off the bat, but there's certain decibel levels that you'll want us to meet in order to approve those permits. Radio frequency, I'd want to confirm, typically, energy projects, whether it's a transformer station or, you know, a gas plant, they'll have certain radio communications between, say, the project and Hydro One for, you know, shutoffs and safety. So similar to really any energy project, even the one across the street from the transformer station, I'd say. And I believe there was a third point there. So noise, radio frequency.
Yeah, or any other, I don't know, vibrations or.
Vibrations, no.
Okay.
No, I mean, nothing of note, no.
Okay.
No.
It's just, you know, these big projects, some people are apparently sensitive to the,
Absolutely.
to those things, and, you know, we certainly wouldn't want to affect somebody's quality of life
Yeah.
in North Glengarry, that's for sure. Are there Health Canada regulations that govern those things like noise? Is that where you go for that?
So for certain, it's not so much Health Canada, but at the provincial level, and for certain sized projects. So for this particular size, because it's smaller, much smaller than a transmission scale project that would connect to, say, 115 kV line and up, this is a small one in comparison. I'd want to double check the exact requirements for smaller projects.
Okay.
But typically, yes, through the province on big projects for noise, there are standards that
Right.
you have to meet. And there's the nice thing about batteries is there's many different mitigation measures you can provide. So I don't know if I might not be able to say the exact project, but I can point to case studies where, say, a battery, like a 5 megawatt battery, that's providing peak shaving for a factory, and that factory is within a city and there's suburbs, suburban developments. They'll have certain mitigation measures, say like enclosings or sound walls, where it can meet that standard exactly. It's just to put bluntly, an added cost to the project. So we work to, consider that proximity, and then if needed, based on the permitting process, add any sound mitigation measures as required.
Okay, thank you for that. So decommissioning is a concern.
Mm-hmm.
You say that the project lasts in and around 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure your company is going to have a long life, but let's say it doesn't.
Right.
And 20 years from now, it is no longer in existence, because you claim that the company will remove everything and cover all the costs and remove the batteries. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're not around, you can't do that. And then what happens is the property owner is obviously not going to pay for that. It'd be very expensive.
Right.
And then the land would probably revert to the township, and then it would be a taxpayer problem. So we'd want to know that our taxpayers are covered.
Right. Yeah, happy to address that point. So one thing I'll say right off the bat is, this, unlike, say, an oil wellhead lease where that project is tied to, say, the market. And so, there's, as we all know, there's stories of abandoned oil wellheads, say, in Western Canada. This project is associated with a 25-year provincial power purchase agreement, a contract with the government. So, let's say Compass wins, we go out of business 3 or 4 years from now. There's going to be a pension fund or an investment fund that picks up the project literally the next day. It's a contract with the government. So that, I find that personally would give some comfort. So there's that. We do have in the lease a reclamation clause for the project. One thing I should also mention is throughout its life, the cells are replaced anyway. I believe it's after 10 years. We need to replace the cells within the actual enclosures. In terms of, say, exact reclamation procedures and what we would do and what ties us to that, I'd like to maybe follow up and provide more clear, concise points.
And that's fine.
Yeah. No, I appreciate
No
that.
problem there. So are you saying then that there's a guarantee backed by the government then?
Well,
Because-
it's guaranteed by the contract.
By the contract?
Yeah. It's essentially, yeah, as long as we're in operation, that project, that interconnection point is associated with a PPA, essentially guaranteed revenues from the government as long as that project's in operation. So someone is always going to want to keep that running as long as we win
I
and
see what
have
you're
the
saying.
commission.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And what's a runaway fire?
A runaway fire?
Yeah.
So, in the unlikely, yeah, I'd happy to say generally go over our overall emergency response, not procedure, but at least our philosophy going towards these projects to address the unlikely event of a fire. And then one thing, yeah, so I'll maybe start from the bottom. As I mentioned earlier, throughout the preliminary design process, we'll include the fire chief and their team in the design and also in the procurement, just letting them know what systems we're thinking about. And we'll have them speaking to a qualified emergency response consultant who, and these are the key points here, that know the language of NFPA. It's the standard that the chief will know and that our response consultant will know, and that also the overarching procedures that our battery suppliers will be following. So essentially there's that. One thing I'll note is our response consultant does come from a volunteer firefighter background as well, so he's able to connect quite well with that regard. The system itself, once the system is built, you have 24/7 monitoring both from our operations and maintenance contractor, who would have experience in essentially all energy generation projects in Ontario, whether it's a solar project, wind project, natural gas. Those contractors, that's their day-to-day is 24/7 monitoring. So there's that. And also from Hydro One, they're going to have eyes on how the system is really at all times and how it's affecting their grid. So 24/7 monitoring. The actual system itself, so instead of, say, one big structure, the structure is broken up into multiple containers, say 10 feet by 20 feet or 10 feet by 40 feet containers that are HVAC cooled. As soon as an HVAC were to go down, the system would go down, for example, to keeping it cool. Fire suppression systems, and they're steel containers. So that's the baseline. All of that fails, let's say, and there is a fire. There are specific procedures really depending on the equipment, and I'd want to confirm the exact procedure. The typical kind of industry expectation is, say, when one of those 10 feet by 20 feet containers does go, the essential procedure is to let it burn off, and that's really for an interest of the protection of the fire crews. They'll burn off. Once that 20-foot container has burned off, all of the other components are isolated, and it's essentially what happens is that burn off contained within that specific pad. Yeah. But say during that permitting process, consultation with the chief, I'd be able to give you the exact way to go. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Councilor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How many 20-foot trailers then would be on that 2 acres?
Right. I want to get back to you. Sorry, it's 17 megawatts is a number. We're doing 5 megawatt projects, 200 megawatt projects. So I'd want to clarify that if you don't mind.
Okay,
in a follow-up
that'd be
email.
great, or whatever.
Yep.
And you mentioned about property tax benefits.
Yep. So that's typical with any energy project and then collectively my colleagues have worked on. There typically is an increase tax benefit. Those exact numbers I would want to clarify, say, working with both my team and staff exactly what those numbers would look like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, can I just follow up?
Subsequent.
Yeah, I would like staff to have a look at this or whatever. And I've sent Sarah I've sent you the stuff from the Ontario Federation of Agriculture today. So we need to look at that, I think. And we'll definitely need to talk to the fire chief about this as well too. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cadell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You draw off the grid, and then you sell it back to the grid.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's money in that?
Yes.
You pay to draw off?
Yes, essentially, in those off-peak hours, as you can imagine, 1 a.m. to 6 a.m., not a lot of energy use. Though, when we're hitting those peaks as a province, we don't hit those peaks with, say, these storage systems. That's brownouts, that's our aging infrastructure that can cause some damage too, not being able to get the power where it's needed quickly. So yeah, just providing that service.
Okay.
To put simply,
well,
yes.
Another question. Some years ago, there was a solar project that they wanted to develop here, and it was limited because we only had so much capacity we could add to the grid. Do you remember that? That in North Glengarry, there was a limit to how much capacity we could add, how many solar panels we could put up, how many windmills, whatever. Is this part of that? Is there a limit? Is that, at that time it was going to take up, a big solar system was going to take up everything we had, all our potential for generating power and putting it onto the grid. Is that a question or an issue now?
Oh, generally, yeah. A good question. I can say, though, our approach to this was Hydro One, fortunately, this time around, I'm not sure when that project was proposed, but this time around does have an online calculator that confirms which distribution lines, and they have a corresponding map, confirms that there was capacity. And then further to that, there was a process, it's called the ISO deliverability assessment, where we gave them inputs to how many megawatts we are proposing on the particular line. And as of last Monday, it came back positive for 17 megawatts. I should add, there's different stages of the electrical studies that happen before a project is commissioned or even approved for construction. And that the next step would be a connection impact assessment, where they're doing further studies and, to put bluntly, really confirming that we can build and confirming what the interconnection costs would be. So, yes, we're good in terms of interconnection for now.
And then, the question is, does that take up all our capacity now? Can we look into that?
It wouldn't affect our capacity at all.
Of what we're allowed to add to the grid?
I don't think so.
No?
Yeah, I'd want to confirm, there's St. Isidore, I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff here, there's St. Isidore Station, I believe you have a few more stations in the area. So sometimes it's isolated to specific distribution lines.
But that's all part of the process, right?
Yeah.
It's like a plan of subdivision. There's all processes to go through to get to the point where you can get that done.
Certainly.
I looked at your the timelines for getting things done, and I mean we're even years away from it operating. Like we're at 2026, 2027, I believe, before
Right.
we're even seeing an operation on it.
Right. Though to add, yes, to add though, that connection impact assessment, once we have that done, which could be, say, end of 2024, our generation is reserved on that line. So someone else who might want to do a solar farm on that line or a battery storage project, depending on the limits, they might not be able to do it, say another proponent. So kind of is what it is there, Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bandon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, James. Couple of questions. The projects that you've given us here as reference, Windsor, you've got the 3 that are adding up to the 15 in Mississippi Mills. Have any of these come to fruition, or are these all just approved right now?
Yeah, so the contract's been awarded, the ISO contract. So short answer, no, the projects aren't commissioned and operating. They're currently going through the permitting phases,
Okay.
stages.
What's the soonest date that one might come into operation?
So with Windsor, that would be, 2023 now, 2025, early 2025, I would say for Windsor, maybe even sooner. Yeah, we're currently making purchasing decisions for batteries now.
Okay.
You know, once that money's in, they're gonna wanna build them, they wanna go and build them quick, yeah.
And those ones, are you, in your, the support information, it mentions lithium iron, you're going with ferrous. Is that set in stone, or is that just a possibility as an example?
Possibility, yeah, lithium ion, phosphate, yeah, it's a typical industry, system, yep.
Okay, and a little safer than cobalt is mentioned?
I don't know enough about that. I
Okay.
don't know enough about the safety differences.
Okay. You mentioned 10-year replacement, so you're looking at replacing it essentially twice.
Well, essentially, and I'd want to confirm, especially depending on the equipment that we select, but so it would be, so after 10 years, call it 10, 12 years, you'd want to replace leading up to year 25. So really just once,
Okay.
I would say.
If you can
If
get
you
12
get
out
it.
of them.
And then, something I'll add, there is always the possibility of contract extension
Yep.
with a utility provider. I can't confirm that's a possibility with the ISO, though that's always a possibility to
Yep.
extend the project life. It's there. Why not? If it is there, yeah.
Well, I think we'll get a good example of that when the FIT and the microfits start coming due, what their interest is in renewing or continuing to buy.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to the fire aspect of it. I had a conversation with the chief today. You mentioned that there's in-container suppression. The presumption is it would be a powder, because it's basically an electronic situation.
Right.
I think he mentioned a type K. I won't even ask about that one, or we won't get into that, because neither of us are going to know, I don't think. So as far as training, emergency preparedness, the unknown here is any additional equipment and or materials for suppression. So what I'm curious about is, if we do have additional costs or we do have additional needs, are you guys willing to commit to paying for that?
Yes.
Okay. The other question is access between the units. There's mention of a wide enough access road, I think a 10-meter wide access road. Between the units, what kind of access are we talking about, or what kind of access is planned? And I'll use the Windsor ones for examples, because presumably that design has been done.
Right. I'd want to confirm the exact
Okay.
dimensions.
So
Yeah.
would it be, as a general question, are we presuming it's going to be wide enough to get equipment in between those?
Oh, absolutely. I can say in our consultation with the Windsor Fire Chief, that was his first question, and we were sure to address that.
Okay.
That was part of the permitting process, something the chief wanted to ensure that was part of their review. So I'd like to later confirm with you, and can certainly say we would be happy, if that was imposed on us, the access, we're very happy to work with
Okay.
with permitting and the chief on that, yeah.
Only other thing I'm going to mention, you mentioned burn off. So if one of these does, ideally not ever, but if one of these does catch on fire and it's left to burn off, we're talking potentially weeks on that, right?
I don't know if that's weeks. I'd want to confirm
We're at least
the
talking
exact
days.
timeline. I'd want to confirm, yeah. I'd want to confirm the exact time, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Final one, go ahead, Gary.
Now, is this brand new technology? Is it in use anywhere else in Canada or?
Yeah, so short answer, no, it is not brand new technology. I do have numbers that I can provide a later date, but in terms of the numbers that are being commissioned in the United States and Europe right now, and for the last, say, 10 plus years, it certainly is in the thousands of megawatts, especially California, Texas, wide scale for sure. I chuckle because I was at a conference the other week in America, and it was massive, 15,000 people just looking at battery storage containers. So hadn't seen anything like that in a while. So in America, certainly prevalent contractors, general contractors that we're talking to, they have experience both building in America and in Ontario. Coming a bit closer to home, what has been common, there have been, for standalone projects, so connecting right to the grid as we've been doing, there certainly are, ISO has done pilot projects in the last 10 years, scattered throughout the province. For example, I was in Perry, and I'm happy to provide these examples, say, in a follow-up. So I was in Perry Sound a few months ago. There was an example or a pilot project there. What has been most common, especially with what a lot of our Canadian general contractors have experience building, are behind-the-meter battery storage systems. So, for example, Ford in Windsor has one. I believe it's around this size, 5 megawatts, and they use that battery system to reduce their peaks on the on-peak days, and the ISO gives them a cut on their electricity prices. So there's, I believe, I'd want to confirm again, but a couple of 100 megawatts of behind-the-meter battery storage already in the province in operation. On the factory lot, in the factory, providing those peak shaving services. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, James, for your presentation, and staff will bring back a report to us at our very next meeting, and we'll make our decision at that point to send a letter of recommendation at that point.
Great. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
great.
Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our second delegation, I'd like to welcome Inspector Mark Hemrick from the OPP to give us an update.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and staff. Thank you again for having me this evening. I will try and make this as quick as I possibly can. I'd first of all like to be saying it dawned on me about 2 weeks ago as I began these meetings that this will be my third time appearing in front of every municipal council. It was very important that when I've been speaking to all the municipal councils around the United Counties, that first of all I thank council, I thank the staff, and I thank the public for all of the support that you provide, not just the Ontario Provincial Police, but your local detachment members. We are extremely fortunate to police the United Counties of SDNG. The support we receive, our members truly see it. And having started my career in another jurisdiction where the policing environment may have been a little less friendly, it's always very refreshing to see that at this day and age, the police continue to receive this type of support. So I would just like to start by saying thank you very much for all of that. Certainly, as I did last year, just provide council with some high-level updates over a 12-month period of some of the detachment activities that have been going on and some of the more significant things that have been reported on. Obviously, Mr. Mayor, you will have been privy to most of these, having been a part of the Police Services Board, and most of those reports are filtered back down to council. But this is also my opportunity to speak to council and address any local issues that may have been of concern and that may have been brought up. So certainly returning us to the fall of last year, and as you're aware, Mr. Mayor and council, one of the priorities of the detachment, and probably the number one concern that when we speak to citizens, is always traffic. Traffic on our roadways, traffic on our highways. But something that was brought to my attention was certainly a lack of visibility and a lack of enforcement on our trails. So for the fall of 2020 or 2023, one of the priorities of the detachment was to be out on all the trail systems that run throughout the United Counties. I can tell you that with tremendous success again, this will be the 4th year running that we have not had a serious personal injury collision on any of our trails in SDNG or any type of fatality. And then I can tell you that all of our proactive patrols that went on throughout the entire fall season on our ATVs were very, very well received. People were happy to see us out there, and our officers were very happy to be out doing something a little different than they're not accustomed to, being out on the trails and interacting with the public. I would certainly like to highlight, and Mr. Mayor, you are aware, but I would certainly like to highlight the incredible work that our auxiliary unit has been doing over the last year. The OPP's auxiliary unit has been severely depleted since COVID. COVID certainly caused, with the standing down of the OPP auxiliary unit, certainly caused many of our volunteer members to stand down their duties as auxiliary members. We have been very fortunate at the SDNG detachment to continue with a very strong leadership team in the auxiliary unit, but also very dedicated volunteers. They spend countless hours volunteering their time, ensuring that the regular detachment members have the support. Probably the biggest thing that they do within the United Counties is attend community events and really represent the OPP at its highest. Probably highlighted for everybody in the room is the Glengarry Highland Games. The auxiliary unit almost matches what our uniform patrol has there throughout a 48-hour period, which is quite substantive, especially because it is a long weekend and these are unpaid volunteers. Just to highlight some of the other things, they certainly engage, or they have been helping us with what we call proactive lookout patrols. One of the common complaints that we do receive from some of the members of the public is in some of our more built-up neighborhoods, they never see a black and white unless they're calling the non-urgent or the urgent number, and that they would like to see some more proactive patrols. We have asked our officers to look after those things, but they are busy with calls for service. So one of the programs that we did put in place is that throughout our villages and some of our more built-up neighborhoods, we've asked the auxiliary unit to sort of be an extra set of eyes and ears, all while showing the black and white and the OPP colors. It's been very, very successful, especially in some areas where we've had some more mischief. They've been involved in the park in Alexandria. They've been in the villages of Long Sault and Ingleside, and in the on the waterfronts in Iroquois and Morrisburg. Very well received by the public. Only get positive feedback, and it's actually very, very fulfilling for the members to do. Some other just very, very quick highlights with regard to the auxiliary unit. Probably their next busiest thing is they participate in numerous community food drives, which serve St. Vincent de Paul, the Agape Center in Cornwall, and the Dundas Food Bank. As I mentioned, those numbers our staffing numbers have been dwindling, so we have paired up with the City of Cornwall Auxiliary Unit to bring our overall numbers up. When I took over as detachment commander, I was certainly an advocate of no borders policing. So I am not one that looks down at the patch on a shoulder. I simply look at it as a public safety issue. So, and with our auxiliary unit, the chief of the Cornwall Police, she feels the same way, that if our auxiliary units can combine together in activities, whether they be in the counties or the City of Cornwall, it benefits all of the residents overall, and it provides a vital public service. So that's something that we've certainly been looking at. Certainly speaking to probably the greatest challenge that I see right now in policing, and you might be surprised to hear this one, but the greatest challenge I see in policing at this moment is climate change. I think we're all seeing it, and it is affecting all of us. The winters are a perfect example. We are seeing a decrease in snow accumulation, but when we are seeing storms, we are seeing a wide variety of precipitation. We might start with rain, then see a heavy snow dump, but then we're ending up with freezing rain. Our last presenter certainly was talking about the power grid, and I I don't know a single person sitting in this room right now who in the last 12 months probably hasn't had their power disrupted or been affected by that. I know it certainly affects our detachment operations, as we only have one detachment which has a fully functioning complete standby generator, and that's down in Long Sault. I know during the ice storm of the spring, we had to work very hard with the United Counties and come up with some very creative solutions, as when the ice storm hit, several of the roads within the United Counties were blocked. And we needed to come up with some creative solutions to ensure that we got those roads open quite quickly, because our officers were almost overwhelmed with calls for service to go and check in with members of the public. So that led us to our winter activities. The winter is always a very interesting time. Again, always dealing with climate change. We experience probably some of our highest call volumes that we get during winter storms. And with the changing precipitation, that's always making things much more challenging. Moving on to the spring, I wish I were bringing council some better news and a better update. The last 2 years that I've appeared in front of council, I've asked for letters of support for our mobile crisis response team. And I think for most of the councillors and yourself, Mr. Mayor, you've heard me present multiple times. You know that I am a huge advocate for that program. There are a lot of things I would give up in our policing world before I would see that program die. I will tell you that last year at this time, I did report to council that we would be, along with the Cornwall Community Police Service and the Cornwall Hospital, that we would be presenting a business case to the Health East to try and shore up that permanent base funding of $120,000, which the counties provide us. Unfortunately, in the early spring, we did hear back from Health East. Our proposal was not successful. It was extremely well received. In fact, there was no feedback with regards to how we could improve it. What we did hear back from Health East was that Health East had other priorities in other municipalities that they cover where there was no base for service whatsoever. So they had no programs running, and certainly there were other municipalities that had a very great need for opioid-related services, which the Health East had to put as a priority. Exactly 4 days later, the municipality or the hospital called me to tell me that Health East had called them back, and between ourselves and the Cornwall Community Police Service, we had received $110,000 in one-time funding based on our proposal. They could not make it a permanent baseline, but they did encourage us to return. Probably the most surprising thing when I met with the hospital, and having worked for the government of Ontario for 20 years, I'm rarely shocked by the government, but they did come back and say that the United Counties were able to provide retroactive billing. So it did not need to be spent in the 3 months remaining in the government's fiscal year. They actually allowed the counties to invoice the hospital retroactively for the entire year to spread it out. So between ourselves and the Cornwall Community Police Service, the counties were reimbursed about $70,000 in funding, which we were very, very grateful for, and which leads me to a tremendous amount of hope that our next proposal back to the ministry will be a successful one. At the same time, our MCRT enhancement grant ran out. Unfortunately, the government was slow to announce that there would be a second round of enhancement grants coming, and that the OPP would have covered any delay period between the time the new grant proposals were being prepared and when the grants were accepted. Unfortunately for us, we deal with, we are not the administrators of the program. We're only a partner, as you're aware, and Cornwall Community Hospital had already delivered the staffing notices to their staff, which were enhancing our grant. So we were not left with enough time to, we didn't provide the hospital enough notice to go back to their staff and keep the existing program. I am happy to report that we should be hearing this week on our latest enhancement grant. I did reapply. All signs are positive, especially because one of the one of this, I guess, the secret sauce or the secret recipe is really collaboration. And one of the things we did was we have collaborated with the Cornwall Community Police Service, understanding that the Cornwall Community Hospital is at the top of our triangle, and that we all interact together, and they are the administrators. So acting from a point of strength, similar to our business case, we applied jointly. There were several things in both of our individual proposals that linked our proposals together. So they were submitted actually together and at the same time. And part of the communication back to the ministry was saying, although they've come from different, ours came from the counties, theirs came from the city, to make sure that they were read together because they were linked together. So I'm feeling very confident that we will be hearing some very good news in the next week or so. I would like to certainly highlight the wonderful work that has been going on with the Police Services Board. One of my priorities as detachment commander when I took over was to have high engagement from the Police Services Board, and certainly when we were dealing with community priorities, which is the mandate of the board. I can tell you that the OPP's strategic plan and the detachment strategic plans were redone this year. And Mr. Mayor, as a part of the board, was part of a special meeting in which the board assisted me in developing and drafting the priorities for the 2023 through 2025 strategic plan. I am extremely pleased to announce that 4 of the priorities specifically were developed directly with the board, and they have nothing to do specifically. They have nothing to do specifically with operations. But they have more to do with community engagement. The plan is at its final stages of approval with the Commissioner's Office at the moment, but if it's made it that far, I am sure that it will be approved, and I would be very pleased to release it to the Police Services Board in its final and have it disseminated down through County Council and to the councils. Some of those priorities that went into it were ties with our Indigenous communities, particularly continuing to work with the Mohawk territory of Akwesasne in strengthening those relationships and repairing relationships that have been damaged in the past. Engagement with youth through the schools, really trying to promote healthy policing. Community engagement, working with the substance abuse coordinator, ensuring that some of the issues that have been plaguing some of our other local communities when it comes to substance abuse are tackled head on throughout. So I'm very, very happy about some of those priorities, and I really feel that they are very achievable and will benefit the community as a whole. Finally, just as a wrap up, we've had another very busy summer. I know I saw many of you at the Highland Games. I think that is always the pride of North Glengarry, and I always use it as the barometer of how busy of a summer we had. And when I saw the 417 bus line vans parked in the corn and there was no parking left, I was very pleased. It will certainly lead to some discussions with the Highland Games Committee for next year about little better planning around traffic. That will be a big point of discussion for us, but they are always willing and open to those discussions, and we always work very well together. I have not seen the final numbers, Mr. Mayor or Council, in regards to the tourism numbers, but I know I did make my way around to all the festivals: Williamstown Fair, Avonmore Fair, South Stormont, South Mountain, the Tubies, and everyone I talked to experienced record weekends. So very, very happy that people are out and about and visiting the counties. Probably the thing I am most happy about, though, is these are the best times to be a cop. It is really those times when our officers are able to go out and have positive interactions with the public and laugh and shake hands and really focus on that community policing. As I thanked yourself, Mr. Mayor, and council and staff and the community for the support, that is what builds that support. That is what really, sets us apart, probably from other policing organizations and other detachments, that we have that strong connection to our communities. And this is why I encourage all my officers, even if you don't like to do overtime, take a pay duty at one of the festivals. It will pay itself forward in ways you can never imagine. That's all I have for you, Mr. Mayor, this evening, pending any questions from yourself or members of council.
Thank you very much for your report, and I'll say that just having attended the Journée de Francophonie today, it was nice to see the 2 or 3 police cruisers bringing all the children down the street and working in partnership with our fire department, so that was really nice to see. So just an example of the partnerships that are happening all the time. So, questions or comments from anyone? I guess you're doing a great job.
You're an easy crowd.
Yeah.
I didn't even have to buy drinks this time.
Well, yeah. Oh, wait.
Can you do something about Facebook? No?
Nor your email, Madam Deputy
No?
Mayor.
No, okay, all
But I
right.
have taken care of the latest barrage you've been receiving. You should not have any more.
Okay,
I've looked after that one.
you have, okay. Thanks. I didn't wanna
Thank
pass
you
that
for
out,
everything.
Well, no, thank you very much, and have a
Okay.
nice evening,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you. Wow. So let's, I wish the Glengarry News was here to say that the deputy mayor wants to shut down social media, so. Okay, so moving on to staff reports, Administrative Department, Glengarry Trails zoning change, Councillor Cadell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Massey, that Council of the Township of North Glengarry directs staff to proceed with changing the official plan designation on Kenyon Concession 2, lots 14, 15, 16, and 17, part of lots 7 to 12, to major open space from rural to preserve the North Glengarry Trails system.
Great, thank you. Who's got this one? You do? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So following the meeting we had where the Glengarry Trails came and did the delegation, we've been in communication with our planning department, with the planning department at the county, with Peter. It was actually Peter's recommendation that we do this change. So right now that piece of property is zoned rural. The best way for us to, as a municipal council, to preserve it as a trails so far that we own it, is to do an official plan amendment for open space. My understanding is that right now, we do not have that ability within the current official plan, but that the county is looking at making that change. So once that change is done, then we can put forth the change to officially change it to official plan or to open space. So the timing of which, and I'll let the chair of the Trails Committee know this, it may not be as fast as he would like to, but with the resolution tonight, then staff can move ahead.
To officially make the official change to the official plan. Okay.
Officially.
All right. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. There are none opposed. Moving on to Community Services Department, confirmation of North Glengarry representative and alternate for the SDNG Accessibility Advisory Committee. Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cadell, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receive staff report number CS 2023-18, and that Council of the Township of North Glengarry authorizes staff to advise the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry that Mrs. Melissa Dubois from Alexandria will serve as representative, and that Mrs. Brenda Palmer from Alexandria will serve as alternate representative for the Township of North Glengarry on the SDNG Accessibility Advisory Committee, replacing Mr. Roderick Tayo.
Thank you, Councillor, and I'd just like to start by thanking Mr. Tayo for his work. He's been on that committee since I got on council over 17 years ago, so he's done a lot of work on that committee, and he's been one of the people that puts a lot into it. So he says he's retiring, so I'm happy he's retiring. So are there any questions or comments on this? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. Treasury Department 2024 borrowing for fleet, Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Martin, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry recommends borrowing for the pumper truck from the Royal Bank of Canada for an amortization term of 15 years with a financing term of 5 years, totaling $80,000.
Thank you, Councillor. Welcome, Kim.
Good evening. This is being brought forward to council. It's a lengthy report and it's a little bit confusing, so I'm going to go through it. Firstly, the pumper is scheduled to come in probably late December, early January 2024. So we need to obtain financing for that. The other two tandem trucks are not coming in until October of 2024. So there'll be a 3-month potential impact to the budget for 2024. But that is going to come back to council later in the hopes that interest rates have come down. This is being brought forward because Infrastructure Ontario, the process to get that funding takes about a month and involves getting lawyers involved, and there's fees attached to that. Plus funding is only available the 1st and 15th of the month, and you're stuck for the amortization term. So if it's amortized over 15 years, the term is 15 years. With the bank, you can get an amortization period of 15 years, but the term can be much less in the hopes that interest rates come down. So this is being brought forward to council because interest rates have gone up again as of today. Infrastructure Ontario is now at 5.16 and the bank is at 5.99. So I need council's direction. If you want to go with Infrastructure Ontario, that is doable, but I need the time. So that's why this is being brought forward. Or we can go with the bank, which I can get funding within 2 days if need be. And we don't have to lock it in for that long-term period, so we can hopefully get shorter, like better interest rates in the near future. The impacts for 2024 are noted. The debt is approximately, now it's about 83 to 86,000 a year, because we're only doing a 3-year for the 3-month for the tandems and the full year for the pumper. The full impact of purchasing those 3 vehicles is about $150,000 a year because it's funded through long-term debt. That's with current interest rates, but the hopes are those come down. So basically it's being brought forward to council for their direction on which way we want to fund that pumper, which is coming sooner than later. There is a little bit of light. The rescue vehicle will be paid off in February of 2024, so that frees up about $13,000. And in March of 2025, the SCBA equipment will be paid in full, and that equates to about another $27,000. So there is some offsetting costs because we're getting rid of some debt, but we're adding some debt. So I'm needing council's recommendation on which way they would like to proceed.
Okay, thank you for your report. I'll just start off quickly. Just at first I was looking and there's a $40,000 to $50,000 savings in the first 5 years by going with Infrastructure Ontario, but looking at the long-range forecast as I was looking online and through the real estate, our real estate board, is that it looks like, you know, we're going to start seeing declines in 2025 and then further declines in 2026, 2027. So it makes financial sense to take the shorter term than rather than sticking with the larger number over time. So that's.
Mr. Mayor, also I was going to say, I mean, I've asked for 15 years and a 5-year term. I don't know if I can get a lesser term. So I might be able to get a 15-year amortization with maybe only a 3-year term, and then we're not stuck. But I haven't had that conversation, but it's certainly something I can look into.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Yep, Councillor Madden.
Quick one. If we go a 3-year term, we have to presume the rate will be slightly higher, yes?
I would assume so, but I don't know.
Okay. Can I just add, I did some work on the full value. So the 1 point, where were you at?
1.56.
Thank you. You say it fast, it doesn't hurt, eh? And I was doing it for 15 years because that's what we have to work with if we're going with IO. And these were the rates that we had last week when we had the package, so I was working with those. There's There's a difference, obviously, but when we go to the full 15 years at those rates, the difference was about $127,000 over the full 15. So, again, doesn't hurt if you say it fast. It's not millions of dollars. It's not crazy dollars. There's about a $42,000 difference over the 5-year. And based on what the payments are, that equates to about 2 payments. So it's not huge. It's just a little bit of background information. I think we're probably in the right move if we go Royal Bank for 3 or 5, whatever we can get.
And Councillor Madden, just to let you know, I'm looking at our current schedule of long-term debt, and our average interest rates on the other items are averaging 2.8, so they're more than double right now.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, would you like me to see if I can, what the options would be at a shorter term?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Planning, Building, Bylaw Enforcement, Road Widening Bylaw 2023, McCormick Road, Glen Robertson. Councillor Cadell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopts bylaw number 24-2023, being a bylaw to acquire and dedicate a portion of a property for road widening purposes, and that bylaw 24-2023 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted this 25th day of September 2023.
Thank you, Councillor. Chantal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is regarding a road widening. The location again is McCormick Road in Glen Robertson. So the recommended motion that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopt bylaw number 24-2023, being a bylaw to acquire and dedicate a portion of a property for road widening purposes. For the background, this office has received a request from the Law Office of Aubrey Campbell McLean regarding a road widening bylaw and adoption of the same by the Township on the property known as Lockheed Concession 3 South, Part Lot 16, Plan Number 14R2609, Part 2, on McCormick Road in the Township of North Glengarry. The request relates for a road dedication bylaw from 1986 that was never registered on title. Now that same home is being sold, Wilcox Law Office discovered this information and is requesting a road widening bylaw be brought to council for adoption prior to the sales transaction, which takes place on September 28th. The Planning Department believes this was a condition on a previous consent application from the previous owner to allow for the road widening of McCormick Road, where the applicant was to dedicate a portion of the road frontage to be transferred to the township. The requirement for road widening is often imposed where the adjacent road does not meet the minimum width standard. In order to correct this on title, a bylaw to confirm the acquisition of certain lands and to dedicate the same as part of the public highways is being presented to council for consideration. So we have 2 alternatives: that council adopt the bylaw as presented, or option 2, council does not adopt the bylaw. There are no financial implications to the township. So the attachments were the actual bylaw and the registered plan. Others consulted for this report was Wilcox Law Office and Aubrey Campbell McLean Law Office as well.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion is carried, none opposed. I will be passing the meeting over to Deputy Mayor as I have to head off to a meeting to discuss financials for the Glengarry News. So, thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
No problem, Mr. Mayor. Make it all happen for us. Okay, moving on to 6E, Public Works Department multi-year retro reflectivity agreement, sole source. I have a motion here moved by Councillor Massey, seconded by Jeff Manley. Councillor Manley, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives report PW 2023-31, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry permits the CAO to enter the township into an agreement with Advantage Data for a 5-year agreement for the reflectivity inspections to meet the Highway Traffic Act requirements. Please go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we have been using Advantage Data for the last 2 years on their 1-year agreement. And essentially they offer us a better rate if we sign up for more years. We did reach out to other companies to try and find if there were other, just to see if we could get a better price, but we actually didn't hear back from them. Anecdotally, it seems this company is already very busy and really only in Southern Ontario. There is the only other thing that could come up is buying the gun ourselves and going around to do the inspections. However, the rate that we get this done for, the completeness of it, and the efficiency of the company, and we've had 2 years of their data so far that has already allowed us to make changes to our sign purchasing. So we're going to get a better life cycle out of our signs before they lose their reflectivity. We've been very impressed with them. So we would recommend going forward with the 5-year agreement or the 3-year agreement. It saves us $1,313 per year by going with that better agreement. That's all.
Okay, thank you for that. Questions, comments? Go ahead, Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Just a quick one. You mentioned buying it ourselves. What's our ballpark? And the other side of that is, could we rent it?
So through Madam Deputy Mayor, so we can't rent it. We weren't able to find one. We have talked with SDG about perhaps buying one and pooling, but then we're concerned because the biggest factor isn't actually the cost of the gun, but it's the training, the interpreting of the results, and the administrative work behind sort of maintaining that inventory and making sure that the people who go out and do it are entering all the data correctly. So there has been talk with the county about them perhaps buying a gun themselves and then training the people and then running it and we pay them. That would work great, except it isn't up and running yet, and it could be 2 to 3 more years before they get anything like that, if that is something that the county is going to go do. And we're very happy with Advantage. We don't think there's going to be a huge cost saving to be able to do it in-house. This is already essentially very cheap. So I would recommend at least going with the 3-year, but it doesn't really look like something that, because our only available manpower would be using students or something like that, which we already have a full workload with, and then there's an amount of training there that we don't have. And there is another portion of this as well, which they essentially give us free consulting as well, because they're dealing with these signage on a frequent basis as well. So I hope that answers the question. Sorry.
Other questions or comments? What do you think? Do you want a 3-year or 5?
No, I would feel okay with 5. Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor of the motion? Carrick, you've got your 5 years. That's it.
You don't get a fire truck, but you get signs.
All right, where am I here? On to non-budgeted expenditure, Maxville sewage pump failure. I have a motion here, moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Madden. Oh, sorry, Councillor Martin, go ahead, read the motion.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Madden, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives the staff report PW 2023-32, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry approves the transfer of $16,264 plus HST from the wastewater reserve for the purchase of a new pump for the Maxville sewage pumping station as an emergency expenditure as per the procurement policy.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So this report sounds a lot scarier than it is, but to give you a breakdown, we have SCADA alarm systems on our sewage pumping stations. We got a call at a high level. The waterworks staff is excellent. They responded. They went to the pumping station, found that it wasn't working. There's an electrical fault, and essentially the pump had failed. Our team progressively responded, and we actually brought in our basically our response trailer to hook up a bypass pump, and got everything working, which is great. What we would like, so with these sewage pumps, there isn't a huge benefit into replacing them on a regular interval as there would be with, say, vehicles. Because once the way that we have the system set up with the SCADA and the alerts and everything like that is that where the pump reaches the end of its life in service, and because we have backups and warnings, we go there and we replace the pump. I have to bring this report. This doesn't mean that we're going to be over budget. We're actually significantly under budget on our maintenance this year, but it is a capital expenditure because we're replacing a significant piece of equipment. How we would like to deal with this in the future is to have essentially have these spare pumps ahead of time, sitting kind of in storage, 2 to 3, we can estimate within about 4 years of when a pump is going to fail, and have that sitting ready to go to be replaced. Our issue at the moment is storage. We don't have we're sort of in between storage places, as you know, so we're trying not to hold extra equipment. But essentially, because that's the logical question that comes out, is how do we stop these pump failures in the future? The short answer is really that we don't. They reach the end of their service life like this one did, and then we take the new one out of storage, we pop it in, and then as per our capital plan, our new spare goes onto the storage rack waiting for the next pump to fail. And these are sort of like light bulbs. Some light bulbs can last a really long time, and sometimes they go a little bit shorter. So we, our environmental manager went and got 3 quotes, found the cheapest one and replaced the pump. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Councillor
thank you,
Massey.
Mrs. Deputy Mayor. Tim, like you mentioned here that it would be nice to have a spare pump, and then you mentioned also that we were significantly below budget on our maintenance. Would it be, because I know the pumps, I know what's going out there, the pumps is 20 years old, goes out the whack, and then you were lucky enough to find something similar, but in the future, you might not be able to find the pumps are, because some of the pumps and the parts are no longer available even from the early 2000s. I know there's pieces, tractors 15 years ago, the parts are, so why don't we buy a spare one now since it's in the budget and we're under budget? Would that be something that would make sense? Or are we gonna wait till next year and wait till something happens?
Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, you've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what we want to do. At the moment, we just have less storage than we really plan to have in the long term. So once we're able to have some extra storage, then we'll have a stock of pumps that we can bring out and put in. Luckily, these pumps, there are a few different designs that'll work. So we're not too concerned about not being able to find the pump. It would be best, really the only detriment that we're suffering right now is that we have to put our response trailer into action to be working that bypass while the other pump is coming from the manufacturer, which doesn't take too long. So it would be good to get storage and so make sure that we can keep some spares, and then we can make that process happen a lot quicker, and then we'll always have that response trailer there to fill the gaps.
Go ahead.
You talk about storage, I don't know if you see in future a storage facility, but how are you gonna address the storage issue next year when you need a pump to store spare pumps?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a little bit of storage. It depends on what pump it is. At the moment, it's working fine, and as the master plans develop, we should have better storage space where we can keep a stock of these. The ultimate plan is to get there, but you know, we have everything kind of in that basement of under the old office right now. So as that situation gets worked out, we'll be able to work something out.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion? Carried, none opposed. Thank you very much. On to award of stone dust tender. Councillor Manley. Sorry, I'll read it, you don't have it. Moved by Councillor Manley, seconded by Councillor Massey, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives staff report PW 2023-33, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry authorizes the Mayor and CAO to enter into a multi-year contract with A.L. Blair for the amount of $98,780. Go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. A.L. Blair came in as the lowest price to provide stone dust. It is, as expected, a significant increase from what we were previously budgeting. I think I've said this point before, but essentially we try, even really when we've got the renewal of our contracts going up, we try not to show that we're budgeting a huge amount, because then it tends to lead the hand to the bidders that this is how much, you know, we're willing to pay. So we were budgeting 25. Essentially, this will end up meaning that we're budgeting 33 per year. It's a 3-year fixed contract, which is really the longest we can really get for a supply like this. And it's actually below a lot of the other townships around here. So we're pretty happy with the price.
Excellent. Questions or comments? We're good. All in favor of the motion? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. On to no unfinished business, the consent agenda. Councillor Manley, please.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Madden, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives the items in the consent agenda for information purposes only.
Does anybody have anything they want to discuss on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. No new business, notice of motion, question period. Does anybody have a question they would like to ask? This is your chance. No? Okay. We don't have closed session? No closed session? So, sorry? Certainly.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I mentioned earlier I had a conversation with the chief today, and I asked him some follow-up questions about the event in Maxville on Saturday, I think it was. And he made the point that the response was fantastic. The team he said it was a fantastic save, I believe were his words. And we're hoping that the homeowner is recovering well. I didn't get word on his status at this point. He was transported to hospital. But literally within half an hour, this whole thing was controlled, contained, and they were in and out of sight within 2 hours. And it was just, we had a conversation about the training and the preparation that they do and how well it worked and how well the team did. And I just wanted to make sure that the public was aware that this is the kind of thing that we spend money on fire for, right? And this is the kind of thing that we like to hear, that it went well and it went, I'll say, smoothly. There was obviously an injury, and that happened before they showed up, obviously. But yeah, it was just to make mention to the public that the fire department deserves some really good credit. They don't always get it, and I just wanted people to be aware of it.
Well, good point, Councillor Madden. I have to tell you, that afternoon I was in my house and I thought every emergency vehicle in Eastern Ontario arrived there. That's what it sounded like. Anyway, it was, yeah, they do a terrific job. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, in which case we will have the confirming bylaw, please. Councillor Martin?
Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Williams, that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry receives the bylaw 25-2023, and that the Council of the Township of North Glengarry adopts the bylaw 25-2023, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, and that by bylaw 25-2023 be read a first, second, third time and enacted in open council on this 25th day of September 2023.
Thank you for that. All in favor of the motion? Carried. And the adjournment. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Ms. Deputy Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Martin, that there being no further business to discuss, the meeting was adjourned at 7:26.
7:26. All in favor of the motion? Carried. I'd like to thank members of council, staff, and the public for attending tonight's meeting. Have a good rest of the evening. Good night.